you do when you lose someone who has had a profound impact on your life? Perhaps you are like me. There are people who have had a profound impact on your life that you either don't have much of a relationship with, or if you are connected to them, it's really from a distance. Maybe you know them, maybe you'd say you have a relationship, but really you have learned from them from a distance. Perhaps, again, like me, there are a lot of people. You've read their books, you've listened to their podcasts, you've watched their videos, you've learned so much from them. They've had an impact on your life, and then eventually their life comes to an end, and you're left wondering, what next? Have you ever experienced that? I know I have, and certainly even recently, I feel like a lot of folks that I've really looked up to and learned from have passed away. Their lives have been lived, they've been lived fully and completely, and they've left so much, but now they're gone. And the question is, what do I do? I would love to talk about that a little bit today, because I think all of us can relate to feeling like we should do something when people we look to leave, and yet we don't always know what to do. We're going to discuss that and more today on the March or Die show. Hello, and thank you again for watching and or listening today. Really appreciate it. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, now is the time to do that right now. Don't wait. You always say, I'll do it later, I'll get to it. You're not going to get to it. Do it right now. That would be fantastic. Wherever you're listening from, you can subscribe or follow, whatever the word is, on that little button. And then take some time, go to jeremystalnecker.com. Just use my name, jeremystalnecker.com. My blog is there. Other contact information is there. There's a place also for you to sign up for a newsletter. Every week I send out content that I hope will be a help to you, things that have been meaningful to me that I want to be a help to you. So please go and check that out. That would be fantastic. A lot of good information there for you. Over the last couple of weeks, and this happens periodically, as I've gotten older, I've noticed things like this seem to come in waves. But over the last couple of weeks, it seems like several people, men and women, that I have looked up to for a lot of years. And when I say looked up to, I mean I've read their books, I've listened to them speak. Maybe I've tried to go to a place where they were speaking or teaching so I could learn from them. Perhaps it's a podcast they have that's been a motivation or a help to me. A preacher, other communicators, a lot of folks who I learn from all the time. In fact, I've said many, many times, we need to have friends. We need to have people that are close to us. We need to have even counselors and mentors that we can sit across the table from. But really today, the day in which we live, there is no excuse for not getting good instruction, not having questions answered, not having good people pour into your lives, because we have access to so many resources. I do my best because I want to grow and I want to learn, take advantage of those resources. And over the years, there have been some people that have been consistent in my life. I read every book I can. Maybe they have a particular niche, and so I go back to them when I'm having a struggle in a particular area because that's what they speak to. Maybe they have served as a motivation to me, whatever the case. It seems like over the last couple of weeks, several of those people that I feel connected to have gone. They have died. Many of them, most of them, the ones I have in mind right now, have come to an age where you would expect for them to have lived their life and move on. It's weird, and I don't know if this is unique to our day and age, but it's weird how you can feel when someone you've either never met or someone maybe you loosely know, you don't have a deep relationship with, but they've impacted you. It's weird how deeply you can feel when they die. I have experienced the loss of family members and close friends, people that I care about and do have a deep relationship with. The feeling when someone kind of outside of that relationship circle, the feeling when they die, it's not the same, but there is a loss. In a lot of ways, at least for me, particularly since I've gone back again and again to these folks and I've learned from them and I've followed them, and many of them have been very consistent in my life over the course of my life. There is a bit of, along with the sorrow of just losing someone who I would call a world changer. They're making things happen. They're educating people. They're equipping people. They're world changers. In addition to just the loss of that, there can be a feeling almost of dread, questioning what happens now. These people that have spoken so clearly into the cultural environment and moment, the people that I've learned from when I've needed them, what do I do now? How do I learn from them now? Who fills the gap now? What happens next? Here's the question in front of us today, and I want to give you some thoughts to go along with this. How should you respond when when you lose someone? How should you respond when you lose someone who has changed your life? Now, I don't like to speak in hyperbole, right? They've changed my life. They've changed your life. Maybe they haven't radically altered the course of your life. But people, I'm not talking about people who have entertained you. We all see people who entertain and we miss them when they go. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that have spoken truth that you've received. You've taken it on. It's made you a better person. It's helped to equip you to be more of what God wants you to be. People who have changed your life. Again, maybe not a radical transformation, but in one way or another, maybe the way you think or the way you look at things, they've changed things for you. What do you do when you lose someone like that? I've gone through this process because often what I do is I just say, wow, I hate that we've lost them. What's going to happen next? I don't know where I'm going to go next. And I don't do anything with it. I want to give you a couple thoughts. I've said that I think 4 times now, but I do want to give you a couple thoughts because, man, there is so much more we should do and can do when someone that has impacted our life goes. Number one, this would be a logical place to start if we had a close relationship with someone. Maybe it seems odd when we're talking about someone a little bit removed. What should we do? Number one, we need to grieve. We need to grieve. Again, that sounds perhaps unusual when we're talking about influencers. We're talking about those world changers, people that are a little bit removed from our situation. But we need to grieve. If someone has spoken truth, or they've said things that have influenced you, they've helped you to look at the world in a different place, they've given you a different perspective. If those people exist in your life, then what you begin to do as you onboard what they've said, you onboard their influence into your life, you begin to make an emotional connection with them. It's interesting how I can be touched by someone. I can love to hear from someone, love to hear them speak or read what they've written, and other people, no connection at all. As I learn from people, and I kind of filter that through my own experience and my own personality, I develop an emotional connection with them. Again, it's different than if I have a personal, deep relationship with someone, but it's just as real. My emotions are connected to what they've said. I've learned from them. Maybe they've helped me at a dark time as I've read a book that they've written, or again, listened to a talk that they've given, even a podcast like this one can change a life. It can be so meaningful. And when they're gone, my emotions are attached to that. Now, we don't often grieve because we feel like, since I didn't know them well, I should not grieve. But we need to grieve the loss. We have lost someone in a very real sense that meant something to us. We have lost someone in a very real sense that has touched us emotionally, perhaps intellectually, maybe spiritually. They've touched us. They've meant something to us. That's why we go back and listen again. That's why we go back and read the next book. That's why we continue to connect to them, because they have connected to us, not only emotionally and spiritually, but emotionally. We need to take the time to grieve, to feel, to express what we feel. Maybe that's getting around other people, friends, perhaps others who also appreciated that person and really learned from them as you have. This last week, pastor passed away. He was in his 90s. And he was a person that throughout my life, from the time I was very young, a child, a young child, was very consistent. My dad really liked him, so when I was really young, we'd watch him on TV and we'd listen to him on the radio. Over the course of my life, from my early 20s, I started getting every book that he wrote, and he wrote a lot of books, and I would read everything that he wrote. One of the best books on a particular topic I was struggling with, written by him, and I've read it several times. I had an emotional connection to him. I just didn't know what to do with that when he was gone. Called my dad because I knew my dad cared about him, and my dad would feel in many ways the same way I did. And I was able to, I'll use the word grieve, to talk about him, to talk about the impact that he made, and to talk about even some of the concerns when people like him pass off the scene. What happens next? We need to grieve when someone that we love dies, someone that we're very close to dies. We know we have to go through a grieving process, and that everyone is different. Everyone grieves differently. Some cry, some get loud, some get quiet, some need to talk to a friend, some perhaps even need professional help, someone who is professionally trained to help them work through that. Whatever it is for you, take the time to grieve, feel, respond, grieve. That's where you need to start. Someone that you care about, whether you had a personal relationship with them or not, has gone. Take the time to deal with that. Here's the next thing you should do. As you have grieved, and perhaps even in the grieving process, celebrate and give thanks for their life. Celebrate and give thanks for their life. I mentioned that we are in this unique historical time where we have access to so much information. I was reading a book this last week, and the author was talking about how there were some speakers that he enjoyed listening to as a child. And the author is a little bit older, so he was talking about when he was young, if you wanted to hear a speaker speak, you had to go and find where they were speaking. You had to travel to another state. You had to go to the place, the building, the place where they were speaking. You had to do your best to get in and get under them, maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity. That's how it was done. Things are so different now. The very best speakers in the world, you have access to them on your computer. You can order books that they've written. Many people, even who haven't lived in our lifetime, what they said has been transcribed. You have access to that. We should give thanks and celebrate the life of a person that was used to make a difference in your life. It is easy for me to simply deal with loss, to perhaps grieve, but then move on, or to focus on what has been lost, that is the person, without taking two steps back to celebrate who they were and give thanks for the opportunity that I've had to learn from them. I'm so grateful for these folks. I'm so grateful for what they did during their lives. I'm grateful that even though their life on this earth is over, they've left so many resources behind that we still have access to. I can still read, I can still listen, I can still watch because of technology, because of what we have available to us. When you lose someone that has profoundly impacted your life, you need to grieve, but you then need to very quickly celebrate and give thanks. That allows you to do the next thing. This next thing, again, I think is really important. Use their death, that loss, as an opportunity to evaluate your own life. This was something my dad and I even talked about when we were talking about this pastor who had died recently, and talking about how when someone like that dies, when they pass off the scene, it causes you to reflect on your own life, to evaluate your own life and ask the question, what am I doing that's making a difference? What am I doing that is important? What am I doing that maybe it won't change the world, but it could change someone's world? What am I doing? Use their passing as an opportunity to evaluate your own life. Evaluate and reflect on our priorities, values, and purpose. Re-examine the choices that you've made, the decisions that you've made, the direction that you're going, and perhaps everything is on cue. Continue to do that, but pause long enough, reflecting on their life to look then at your own, to evaluate. Am I living the kind of life that would reflect well on what I've learned from them, but also that would allow others to look to me? Use the passing or the death of those who have profoundly impacted you to evaluate your own life. Here's the fourth one. Having grieved, very important process. We all grieve differently. Having grieved, and then celebrated and given thanks for the life of that person, but also the opportunity to be impacted by it or to learn from it. Evaluate your own life. Am I on track? Am I where I need to be? Are my purposes correct? Am I living fully what God has created me to live? And then make a decision. I talk about decisions so often. The power of decision. And it's powerful because no one can decide for you. So maybe that's a negative power. If you don't decide, no one can do it for you. But the powerful part of decision is that no one can take it away from you. You get to decide what you will do next. Now, there may be limitations. There may be some other things that stand in your way that you have to deal with, but you get to decide what happens next. So what happens next? We've lost, we've grieved, we've celebrated, we've evaluated. What happens next? Decide to live for others. Decide to live for others. When I talk about people that have impacted my life, again, there are a lot of people who have impacted my life, people that are very close to me that have impacted my life. But right now I'm talking about those that are a couple of steps removed, a couple of rings removed from my life. When I talk about those people, they're people that, since I didn't know them well, I only perhaps know them by reputation or what I've seen portrayed. But they're all people, the ones that I have in my mind, that have lived their lives for others. They have produced words and sermons, messages, speeches, talks, recordings. They have produced content, if you will, in our modern parlance. They've produced content that was produced, designed, created to help other people. More than anything, if you have lived your life for others, I imagine you wouldn't want to simply be mourned or remembered. You would want people, since you lived for them, to respond to your passing in a way that propels them forward. That takes what you did and what you taught them and develops that into your legacy as they live it out and hand it off to others. That's what you want. So when you're reflecting on the lives of those who were that for you and did pass on before you, because we're all going to get there, you need to make a decision to live your life for others. One of the most meaningful ways to honor the memory of someone who has impacted our lives is to live our own lives in a way that will positively impact others. This can be really difficult and really confusing in a world that allows any person like me to sit in front of a microphone and sit in front of a camera and say whatever I want to say and push it out on platforms that are basically free and that have an audience of as many people as want to get on. Millions can look and listen, watch, and follow. This idea that life is all about me, it can be cultivated in our world. We can do the social media stuff and the recording stuff, the speaking, the writing, the teaching, the videoing. We can do all of it as a way to build our own platform. We can do that. We can. We all have access to those tools. They're inexpensive today. They're easy to access. We can do it. If we do it well, even building our own platform, our own brand, we can bring financial resources into our lives, and people have. I'm not against that. But we have to fight the urge or even the push from culture to live that way. We need to make money. We need to be able to bring resources into our lives and the lives of our family. But the overarching focus of our hearts, our actions that come from that, the words that we speak, the things that we do, must be for others. Because it is only as we are making a difference in the lives of other people that we're actually making a difference. How are you stewarding your time? This is a simple way to take the temperature on whether or not you're living for others. How do you steward your time? Is your time the time that is available to you to decide what to do with? Now, sometimes people work jobs, they don't get to decide necessarily what to do at that time. But the time that you do have, that you get to steward over, that you get to make decisions for, what are you doing with that time? Is it about self, gaining attention, gratifying yourself, doing things for yourself? Or is it about serving others, ministering to others, working for others? How are you using your financial resources, your other physical resources, those things that come into your life through work, other ways that God blesses? How are you using those? The influence that you have, the ability to influence others through close relationships, whether in your family or at work, maybe in your neighborhood or your church, wherever it is. How are you stewarding over those things? How are you using them? What kind of an example are you providing to other people? When we reflect on the lives of those that have impacted us, the funnel needs to go from grieving to celebrating to evaluating down to the point of making a decision in light of their influence to live for others. You see, the reason that you have an emotional reaction to their loss, even though they may not have known your name, they weren't close to you, the reason you respond emotionally, the reason we need to talk about grieving, the reason we're having this conversation right now is because they lived in a way that impacted you, even though they may not have known it was happening. But they pointed their lives toward others. The best thing you can do to honor, to celebrate the life of someone who's impacted you is live in such a way that what was poured into you from them will then be, as you turn around, poured into others from you. And their blessing in your life, those who've gone before you, becomes a generational blessing. As from one generation to the next, the truths, the lessons, the resources, the opportunities are passed down. And that is a real legacy. I hope that I live in such a way that when I'm gone, people will grieve. I hope that my life is such that people will say, we're thankful that he was a part of it. I hope that the things I've done and the things I've said will cause people to evaluate their own lives. Not because I desire to be the standard of perfection, but just want to motivate people, edify people, encourage people, prod people. Look at their lives and ask the question, am I doing the best I can do for God, for others? I want my life to be the kind of life that motivates people to decide that they're going to live their lives and steward what God has given them for the benefit of those that God brings into their lives. It is so crazy how the loss of someone we may not have physically known can impact us. But that's only because their life impacted us. Their words, their writing, it impacted us. What do we do when they're no longer here to speak truth? Thankfully, we can go back to what they have said. We can watch the videos, listen to the recordings. But we should allow their lives to motivate us. Step up to fill the gap that they've left, to carry others forward, to leave a life and a legacy that matters. I'm grateful for the people that have impacted me. I know that you are as well. Live a life that reflects what they did for you. Hope that's a help, that thought, that perspective. Sometimes we just need to stop and go, what do I do with this? And we really should respond when those that have impacted us go on before us. We're all going to get there. So let's live the way that we would want others to respond when we move on. Again, I hope that's a help to you. Take some time, go over to jeremysonlicker.com. Please check that out. I would appreciate it. The blog is there, other contact information. You can find all of that there. And then take some time, go to lifeaudio.com. Lifeaudio.com is where this podcast and a ton of other great content is. You can find all of that there on Life Audio, and that would be fantastic. Really appreciate you listening and or watching. Share this content with others, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day. The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. We've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live. Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org.